Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. I am wearing my glasses again, and that is because I am going to be reading a bit from uh, an article which is in Sky News. Let me explain what Sky News is. This may not be of no interest to you, but for some reason, as a person who went to journalism school, that was my original career plan, well, in college. I have an ABJ, Bachelor of Arts in Journalism degree from University of Georgia. Sky News used to be owned by the same company that owned Fox News, which I guess is 20th Century Fox or something like that. Now, Sky News in the UK is owned by the same company that owns CNN, whereas Sky News in Australia is still owned by Fox. Wouldn't you know it? And they both have the same logo. Why? I don't know. Makes no sense to me. Maybe you can figure it out. But regardless, there was an article, and pardon me because I'm going to be looking at this article as I am talking into the mic and looking at the webcam as often as I can. This article was published yesterday. Wouldn't you know it? Yesterday. The title is, "Are We Heading for World War III? Experts Give Their Verdicts." Okay. First paragraph. I'm just going to read a bit of this. The Defense Secretary has warned we are moving to a pre-World War. I have no idea what that means, but whatever. Top military brass are talking about conscription, which means a draft, and tensions in the Middle East show no signs of abating. So are we on the cusp of another world war? Sky News asks experts to weigh in. Now, again, I'm not going to read you that much of this thing. I'm just going to read you bits and pieces here and there. And what much of this article does is it focuses, to my surprise, honestly, not on what is happening in Gaza, but what is happening in Ukraine. And it has given Ukraine a lot more power, and it has also made Russia feel emboldened that it can go and conquer other countries and possibly get territories back. So that surprised me a bit. The article also focused a bit on China and upon the conflict between China and Taiwan, and that the fact that Russia has gone to war against Ukraine, and the fact that Israel has gone to war against Gaza has empowered China, mainland China, to feel that perhaps it might be able to conquer and regain Taiwan. Now, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for this world? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Just when we thought that things couldn't get worse. I know I did. Well, not really. But I hoped that things would not get worse, even though I had a sneaking suspicion that they would. So let me read you this last part of the article. And that's all. Last 3 paragraphs, in fact, in the article. Last 4 paragraphs. The last element is more immediate. Russia has in the last year doubled its defense expenditure. It now spends 6% of its GDP, gross domestic product. Why did they change from GNP, gross national product, to gross domestic product? I assume they are two different things, but I don't know. Okay, let me start that again. The last element is more immediate, as Russia has in the last year doubled its defense expenditure. It now spends 6% of its GDP, or 1/3 of its government expenditure, on the military. By contrast, we spend just over 2% of our GDP, or some 4.5% of government expenditure. Much of this is required to fight the war in Ukraine, but the Russians, ever adaptive, are using the crucible of war to reform, restructure, and rearm their forces. There will be a ceasefire or some kind of uneasy stalemate, possibly this year, almost certainly by next year. That's a long time from now. We just started 2024. So next year, 2025 is not tomorrow. But anyway, almost definitely by next year in Ukraine. We will then be faced with a new Russian army to be used where President Putin wills. And he has a long list of readjustments to correct. That's certainly true. What he sees as the disaster of the collapse of the Soviet Union. Yeah, Putin has never been happy about what Mikhail Gorbachev did. He always saw Gorbachev as kind of a traitor, that he more or less gave up Russia to the West. Certainly, he gave up East Germany to West Germany, become Germany. And now a big chunk of what used to be the Warsaw Pact is now a part of NATO, which was really good wisdom on the part of NATO, wasn't it? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. That was a really foolish idea. Why in the world would NATO try to incorporate nations that were previously a part of the Warsaw Pact into NATO? And yet that's precisely what NATO did. Well, I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe I shouldn't even ask why. Obviously, government bodies, international bodies, want more nations on their side. So trying to get Warsaw Pact nations into NATO, into the EU, makes a certain amount of sense. But it doesn't make sense when you consider Vladimir Putin and the fact that Vladimir Putin is not happy about the end of the former Soviet Union. He doesn't like that. He wishes that the Soviet Union had never ended. Now, does that mean that Putin is a communist? No. I don't know if Putin ever was really a communist, but I can't read his mind. But certainly now, if anything, he is a fascist. His favorite philosopher was a Russian fascist whose only regret in life, apparently, was that Russia did not start fascism. He was upset that Benito Mussolini, the head of Italy, started fascism and not Russia. I guess Stalin? I don't understand that. Of course, Stalin has sometimes been called a red fascist, a very controversial term. Still, I think that's a really inappropriate term. Stalin was not a fascist. He was definitely a communist. But regardless, that is the way Putin feels. He wishes that Russia had started fascism. That makes Putin a fascist, because he is one. Okay, now, final sentence. We are most definitely in a pre-war era. Now, off come the glasses, and then back I go to the Zoom interface. Actually, that wasn't Zoom. I actually clicked on the wrong thing, but who really cares? Ah, there I am. Okay, so now I can see myself. I clicked on Facebook Messenger by mistake. I should have clicked on Zoom instead. This is a very troubling time. We live in an age of great contradictions, and the greatest contradiction of all is imperialism. We live in a time of great warfare. I mean, people thought, I don't know how many people, but people thought, I'll just leave it at that. People thought that war was over. Then suddenly there was World War I. That totally blew away everyone's expectations. Now, I wasn't around to see it, but I know before that time, there was a feeling among the world population that we had literally eliminated war, that war was over. We had outgrown it. We had become too mature. We had become too exalted. We had become too adult-like, I guess, to engage in any more wars. Then World War I. Now, was World War I a world war? Most experts would say no, that it was really a regional war, not a world war. But regardless of what you call it, it was a war. Then World War II started, which my father was in. And that was definitely a world war. My father was actually in the National Guard. He enlisted in the National Guard. Till this day, I cannot figure out why my father enlisted in the National Guard. I don't understand it, but he did. And so after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, his battalion in the National Guard was transferred into the Army. And my father became a corporal, which he remained throughout his career. Maybe he started out as a private, I don't know, but he was a corporal. And he was also a medic. He used to brag about all of his experiences over and over and over again. It was really annoying. But he was very happy. That was literally the greatest period of his life, fighting in World War II. He really enjoyed it. Good for him. He liked fighting in a war. He is the only person I have ever known, literally, who has spoken positively about being in a war. Now, some people will speak positively about aspects of a war, like the camaraderie, the collegiality that they developed with other people in the military, soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors. But my father actually liked the war. Who likes a war? My father. That was certainly a war. My father spent most of his time, maybe all of his time, in Australia, the Philippines, and New Guinea. And I know in one of those places, I believe it was Australia, but I might be wrong, he killed a few Japanese soldiers. When I asked him why, he said, well, it was either them or me. And I didn't want it to be me. I guess that makes some sense. But in any event, he really enjoyed it. I would not enjoy it. I would not enjoy being in a war. I can promise you that. I would hate it. I would despise it. I would try to figure out every way I could to get out of that war. But my father loved it. Anyway, are we heading toward World War III? This article in Sky News UK, not Sky News Britain, Sky News Australia, but Sky News UK, seems to be saying yes, sort of, or at least the possibility is there, or at least we may be heading in that direction. If you were not frightened before, now I can tell you is the right time to be frightened. You have my permission to be frightened. Who in the world wants to see a third world war? At least during World War II, atomic weapons were not used until the end of the war on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, which had devastating consequences on those people. The ones who did not die, most or many of them had lifelong birth defects, as did many of their children. So now it's not only the United States which has nuclear weapons, which was the case at the ends of World War II. I don't know how many nations have nuclear weapons. Let me just say a lot, a lot. And there may even be more than we know. For example, everyone knows that Israel has nukes. Israel knows that Israel has nukes. Israeli officials have supposedly, against orders, admitted that Israel has nukes. And yet officially, the Israeli policy is we don't speak about nukes. I'm sorry, buddy. You already have spoken about it many, many times. So we know that you folks in Israel have nukes. Other countries, not as clear. Does Iran have nukes? They say no. They say they're developing nuclear power or nuclear energy just for the sake of energizing, providing power to the country, not for war purposes, not for military purposes. Are they telling the truth? I don't know. I can't read their minds. My guess, especially given the fact that Iran and North Korea are allies, and we know that North Korea has nukes, there's a pretty good bet that Iran has nuclear weapons too. Now, I have no inside knowledge. I could be totally wrong on this. Maybe they don't have nukes. But I'm thinking to myself, and I always think to myself, if I were Iran, would I want to have nukes in the world as we see it? And sadly, my answer would be yes. Considering the instability of the world and the threat that some nations pose to other nations, if you are a country like Iran, which has been openly threatened not only by the US, but by Israel and by other countries in the Gulf area, then I would want to have nukes. I would. I would not be happy about that. I would not want to be happy that I think that I should have nukes, but I would want it as a security precaution, at the very least, to protect my country from being bombed. On the other hand, the best protection against being targeted with nuclear weapons is letting the world know that you have them. Israel has done that, although in a very, I don't know, a very cowardly way. Iran has not. Iran has claimed the opposite. No, we don't have nukes. So why would they say they don't have nukes if they did? That's my question. Maybe you have an answer to that. You can provide it in the comments section and tell me what you think the reason is. So maybe that's evidence that they don't have nukes. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a guy sitting here blowing into the wind. I have no way of knowing whether Iran actually has nuclear weapons. All I know is that if I were Iran, I would want them, and I would figure out a way to get them from North Korea. Now, the distance between North Korea and Iran is considerable. So getting them from one country to the other would not be easy. Maybe that has prevented nuclear weapons from going from North Korea to Iran, maybe. But still, I would make an attempt. I would certainly make an attempt to get nuclear weapons. I mean, if the US has them, which Iran or Iranians have called the Great Satan, then I'd want them too. I'd really want them too. And it's not because I'm a sadist. It's because I want to look out for the welfare of myself and my own country. I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I would definitely want to have nukes. Even though I would not be happy about wanting nukes, I would want to have nukes without any doubt. So, are we heading toward World War III? If you're asking me that question, you're asking the wrong person. As I have said on multiple occasions, I am a horrible prophet or prognosticator. I cannot predict anything. Almost every one of my predictions has failed miserably. So I have no way of knowing. But rather than predicting, let me just say what I think. Okay, maybe that's a way of getting around it. I'm not predicting anything. I'm just saying what I think. Maybe I'm cheating, but so be it. What I think is, yes, we are close to some kinds of World War III. Now, exactly what that will be, I don't know. I assume some kind of I like the initials NBC, which does not stand for National Broadcasting Company in this case, which stands for nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. And we may be close, fairly close, to seeing those weapons employed on a relatively wide scale. If that happens, will we, as a planet, will we, as humanity, survive? That I don't know. That I don't know. I would assume that our numbers would be diminished considerably we would not have the same number of humans in the world as we do right now. I don't see how that could fail to happen. I mean, NBC is not playing marbles. It's pretty dangerous stuff. So it seems to me that there would be a considerable lessening of the global population. And again, my feeling, not my prediction, not my prognostication, my feeling is right now that yes, we are somewhere, not a prediction, on the brink of something close to World War III. Okay, to wrap this up, maybe I should have wrapped it up before, I don't know. But to wrap this up now, if that happens, what will be the outcome? Obviously, I don't know. Obviously, no one really knows. But I think certainly the first world will be largely wiped off the face of the earth. There may be some remnant of the first world, but I doubt it will be considerable. Certainly also a considerable number of people and nations in the third world will be wiped off the face of the earth. I'm thinking of North Korea, and I'm thinking of the Gulf countries like Iran, but not only Iran. So it's not just the first world that would be devastated by a third world war. It is the third world as well. But my feeling is that there will be, or there is likely to be, more of a remnant of the third world than of the first world. Why? Here's why. Because the third world, by and large, is more remote, as opposed to concentrated in large cities. You have people living in farms, people living in very, very rural areas. You have places that are not likely to be targeted by nuclear weapons. For example, why would anyone target Africa? Most of Africa. Why would anyone target Latin America? Again, most of Latin America. Why would anyone target the Caribbean? Same thing, most of the Caribbean. See my point? The third world seems to me to have a better chance of surviving an NBC catastrophe than does the first world. Does that mean that the third world will escape without any deaths at all? Obviously not. I mean, you can't limit the scope of NBC, especially nukes. I mean, once you begin launching nukes, those nukes will begin going in every imaginable direction. At least that's what I would think. I don't know. I am not predicting anything. But I do think that the third world will survive in greater numbers than the first world. And therefore, I hope that the third world, not the first world, the third world will be around to begin the process of revolution leading to the establishment of communism or socialism, or maybe communisms and socialisms, meaning different communisms and socialisms in different countries, like Stalin talked about. Socialism in one country, which really is socialisms in many countries, that each country could have a free rein to decide what version of socialism it would like to have. That's what Stalin believed. And I agree with him. I think he was right. I think that is the best course to pursue. So the socialism that we saw in the Soviet Union, the socialism that we saw in Yugoslavia, the socialism that we saw in mainland China were not the same at all. They were nothing at all alike, really. In fact, for long periods of time, those three countries hated each other. So it's not likely that they will attempt to impersonate each other. So again, I am just guessing. And please don't take what I'm saying as anything more than a wild guess, because no one knows the future. I wish I did. Part of me does anyway. Part of me wishes I knew the future so I could plan for it. How would I plan for it? I don't know, maybe not. But a part of me wishes that right now, like I don't know the future. It's kind of like if somebody told you, do you want to know your date of birth? I can tell you, I know it. What would you say? I would say no. I do not want to know my date of death. I do not. If you know it, please don't tell me. Imagine going through your life with this thing in your mind constantly that you have in your head the idea of when you will die. No, that's not something that I would want to do. Not by any means. So, by the same token, just as I would not want to know the date that I will die, or even the year that I will die, or even the decade that I will die, I don't want to know if and when nuclear weapons will be used. I am content to wait and to hope that things work out, that the third world at least survives whatever troubles and travails, poetic, eh, we may experience. I hope that the third world will survive. The first world, I don't give a darn. I literally don't give a darn. The first world, if it does survive, in my feeling, did not deserve it. Literally did not deserve it. Not to say it won't happen. Bad people sometimes live long lives. Good people sometimes live short lives. So you can't make those kinds of predictions. Or at least I won't. At least I will not attempt a prediction of that sort. So I will just leave it at that for now. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day, as pleasant as it can be, and a better day tomorrow.